I'd like to thank you all for coming to Design Matters Live, and this is our final event for 2007. A great big thank you to Adobe, who has really gone above and beyond to put this series on.
You're here tonight to hear me interview Alan Dye. And what a trajectory. I mean, he has really taken the design world by storm. In less than a decade he's been working. Please join me in welcoming Alan Dye.
I have very early memories of being down in the wood shop, kind of making things and working with my dad. And he taught me a lot about process, because with woodworking, a lot of what you do has to do with process. So there's this old saying, like, measure twice, cut once. And I think that's where a lot of kind of my love for making things and the creative process really started. I really didn't draw people. I drew letters and words kind of a lot when I was a kid. It always bothered me that my name was A-L-A-N, and I could never get the capital L to really fit well with the second capital A. So long story short, I'm at Syracuse, and they kind of give this introduction to the communication design program, and I had this moment of clarity. I still remember it, where I said, oh my God, that's what I'm meant to do. My mentor was this teacher named Ken Hine, and he was kind of old curmudgeon-y New York school sort of art director. I was presenting a logo for some company that I'd made up, and I turned to Ken and looked at him sort of expecting kind of a nice response, and he says, you know, Alan, I'm really glad you got all this bullshit out of your system so that now you can make some good work. It really made me much more aware of my process as a designer, because for me at least, it really is an exercise. I have to work at it. I have to make a lot of work until I get to something that I'm happy with. I kind of knew I needed to be in New York, so I kind of jumped at the opportunity to work at a place like Landor, which, you know, has always been known as kind of the cream of the crop when it comes to kind of worldwide branding agencies. The project that kind of jumps out of my mind that was most meaningful from the work that I did at Landor was actually packaging for Molson beer. I grew up in Buffalo, right on the Canadian border, and it's a brand that, you know, it's kind of funny to say this, but I kind of grew up with it. It allowed for me to tell all of my high school friends back home what I did for a living, and they kind of got it, you know. We really spent a lot of time researching the lineage of Molson beer, the kind of national history of Canada. We just really pushed the vernacular of what we felt made up a true sort of Canadian beer. At the time, I really wasn't interested in going to another large agency. I was actually hoping to go somewhere much smaller. But after doing a little research on what Brian Collins was doing with the group, I got really excited about it. It's called the Big Group, Brand Integration Group. So I went to meet with Brian. Brian took a look at my book. He thought it was pretty nice. He said, this is all great. And then he said, but what's that piece of cardboard? You know, you get jammed in the pile there. And I said, well, this is just a bunch of my doodles, my sketches, and this is kind of who I am. This is what I do, you know. And he ripped through that and said, I want to hire you to do this with my clients. I really feel like I was able to grow exponentially as a designer within the Big Group. We would all have our offices, but outside of our offices, we had these giant boards where we'd pin work up. And you wouldn't put work on that board unless it was kind of pushing the boundaries and doing some really interesting things. So the nature of just, frankly, having to expose yourself to the rest of a really talented group of people really forced you to kind of push your game a little bit. You couldn't get away with design for design's sake. The design had to really specifically solve a client's problem.
So there's a very different way of designing packages and brands than there is a book cover or...
Yeah, it's why you have to balance it out by doing a book jacket every once in a while.
Exactly.
I kind of can't help myself but to take on as much of this like little side work as I can. And this is something I've done kind of throughout my whole career, trying to balance corporate work with side projects and freelance work. I just love the Times and the paper, and a good friend of ours, Brian, is the art director there. This is really great work because Brian will call me at like noon and say, I need sketches in an hour, finals by 2. There's also something really wonderful and immediate about it.
Tell us how this cover concept came to be.
Gawker's kind of a fairly snobby blog. I had fun going through all the quotes, and then the editors over in New York sent me even more. Chris Dixon, who's the art director over there, he'd call me at night, you know, while I was toiling away or whatever, and he'd say, we can't put douchebag on the cover. I oftentimes want to be trying to do something different or exploring a new style. But I think, like anything else, your tendencies kind of creep in. I'm kind of always drawn back to words and type play. I really enjoy the way that, they act as form. Kate Spade, as you can imagine, isn't a large company. When they bring people in, it really is about bringing someone sort of into the family. Kate Spade brand story is fairly complex. So it's this never-ending balance between really, really, really high sophistication, but with that all-American charm. The whole idea with the stores, I think, really was to create this environment that was not only about maybe buying this or that, but also about kind of walking into a larger experience. And you can't help but get an understanding of who Katie is and what her interests are. And it's very aspirational, you kind of want to be a part of that story. So a lot of the ad campaigns that we made, we really spent a lot of time kind of propping them and writing the script. But Andy always wanted to make a film because, we'd write these little stories, and oftentimes Andy was really the one that would drive this. Right. It was never about like doing a brand film. It was about, wouldn't it be fun if we went out and made a film? I ended up sort of being the guy who oftentimes would have to say, in the middle of a photo shoot for a campaign, hey, we probably should, get a bag in there. You know what I mean? Like, he just wanted to make these great images. They always were kind of looking for amazing art and design before they were concerned with commercial success. It allowed for me to really not only grow as a creative person, but also to really see how someone thought in a very intimate sort of way about crafting their own brand. The opportunity to work at Apple was a huge one for me. We're really trying to make sure that there's a consistent story kind of told across all of our different touch points. So packaging and the web, direct marketing, the retail experience. It's me really working with all these amazing people, different groups, whether it's the product designers or the packaging engineers or the product marketing team, to really get to a point where you launch something so consistently. I understood that even though it was a large company, it felt really small, and it was really nimble, and change was almost expected, and innovation was expected. And that's really what got me kind of excited about it. The design world is changing rapidly. You can see it changing by the day. The opportunities on the web are really huge. We can now communicate with our customers in ways that you really couldn't 5 or 10 years ago. So it's really interesting. I find it really fascinating to take a step back and really look at the world and the role that designers play in the world. Adobe's always enabled designers to make the work that they make. And it seems like they've always been a partner to great organizations like the AIGA and really helped to foster the design community. It's always good to be gathering as a group of designers or thinkers and talking about the work that we do. It's an exciting profession to be in.
Wonderful. Thank you, Alan.
Thanks.